Welcome back to ThimbleberryU. I'm John Jacquet. Amy Wallace from Thimbleberry Financial joins me for part 2 of our series. Amy, our final 5 in our 10 retirement myths that we are debunking today.
Jag, it'll be fun to talk about these today.
Absolutely. The first one is a big one, I think, and that is Social Security. I think a lot of folks believe they can rely solely on Social Security for their income in retirement. Let's talk about what the reality is behind that.
Social Security is designed to replace only about 40% of your pre-retirement income, which means there's a need for additional savings. Imagine that you've got this income stream that's going to replace about 40% of your pre-retirement income needs. Therefore, you need to replace about 70 to 80% of your pre-retirement income to maintain your standard of living. That's why Social Security doesn't cut it. Now, you might say, well, 40% plus 70 or 80% is 110 to 120%. That doesn't make sense.
Read my mind.
We've got some increased costs potentially with healthcare. We've got taxes to account for. So I'm trying to account for all of that in giving some rough numbers.
Inflation, too. Let's not forget that.
Absolutely. It's not enough, as I said, but it is a valuable piece of the puzzle. 40% of pre-retirement income, is nothing to sneeze at.
Right. It's an important piece, but definitely not the whole thing.
Absolutely.
Okay, myth number 2 today. You'll spend less in retirement. That sounds good. People say you're going to spend less in retirement. I got to imagine that's also a myth.
I'm going to say absolutely from my experience. Now, it's not true for anybody, right? This is not a world where things are black and white. Different people do different things differently. They have different goals. But from the vantage point that I approach things at as a financial planner and the people I work with, people are goal-oriented. They are looking to retire to something rather than get away from something. And while you might spend less on commuting or other work-related costs, there are other expenses like healthcare, travel, hobbies that people outside of healthcare, look forward to, right? What do you want to be doing? Where do you want to be going? How do you see spending your time? Imagine you're on vacation. Do you spend more in a week on vacation or 2 weeks on vacation that you do while working for a week or two?
So I hope that's a rhetorical question because I'm thinking about my spending habits on vacation.
Yeah, for most people, that's an absolute yes, I spend more. Now, do you spend at that rate when you're in retirement? Probably not. You're still doing more things. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reports that households led by someone age 65 or older still spend an average of $48,000 annually.
Okay.
Now, for some people, that $48,000 a year may not sound like a lot. But if you have higher than average income while you're working, there's a good chance you're also going to have higher than average spending and desires to spend once you're retired.
That makes sense.
And then the last thing here, which we touched on, is planning for the unexpected.
Sure.
None of us know what our healthcare costs are going to be in the future. We don't know what will happen to us. And so we have to prepare for that, and that can really increase those costs.
For sure. So it's not necessarily less spending, but different spending in kind of the grand scheme of things.
Absolutely. That's a great way of saying it.
Our next myth is that you should avoid stocks to protect your savings. Let's talk about this.
This is an interesting one. So the idea behind this being that once you're retired, your investments should become more conservative. In principle, I don't necessarily agree with that. I agree with investing according to the risk you are comfortable with. I call it you can sleep at night test.
Yep.
As well as what you need. Sometimes those things need to work together. Here's where this comes from. Back when my grandfather retired, retirement lasted 5 years. Today, we can expect retirement to last 20, easily 30, or even more years.
Yeah.
So when we're looking at that, that's essentially the same as the number of our working years if we start out.
Yeah.
If we look at that, it's similar to the number of working years we have. So if we're planning that retirement's going to last about 30 years, let's take a step back and say, gosh, I am 25 years old starting my first career.
Mm-hmm.
I'd ideally like to retire around 65. So I have 40 years to plan for an approximate 30-year retirement.
Yeah.
All right. Both 30 years and 40 years, or even if we shrink the retirement, say 20 years and 40 years, those are long time frames.
Yep.
They aren't 2 to 3 years. And stocks typically outperform inflation,
Mm-hmm.
and especially do so over the long term.
Right.
So if our retirement was only going to be 5 years, I think this wouldn't be a myth that we don't need stocks in our portfolio. But when we need retirement assets to last, similarly to we're starting to save throughout our career to be able to retire, we need these assets to continue to grow into the future. And stocks are part of a well-diversified portfolio that can allow that portfolio to keep growing. Here's the other piece. The more conservative we become, the more we run the risk of inflation outpacing growth on our dollars.
Yeah.
And that matters because, as I said, stocks lead to that growth. But the biggest risk to retirees is that inflation outpaces growth on their money because it feels secure, but in reality, they're losing purchasing power each and every year.
It's a really good point. And I think we've talked about in previous podcasts, instead of thinking of retirement as this line of demarcation in the sand, you want to be planning throughout that long retirement you were just mentioning, Amy, instead of saying, I have to get to, 2045 when I'm going to retire. No, you want that money to last at 2045, 55, 65, 75, and so forth. And being diversified can help with that. So being invested in the market can actually help your money last longer, right?
Absolutely. It just has to be in the right percentages.
And that's going to be different for everybody.
Absolutely.
Okay. Our next myth, you can always keep working if you need more money. If you need more money, just, go back to work.
I like this, Jag. This is kind of the opposite of the myth that we talked about in our last episode, where retirement just means not working at all.
Yeah.
So you can always keep working if you need more money. In theory, this is true, right? If I need more money, I can find a job and I can work. Well, my questions to you are, how much money do you need? Are you able to get a job earning that after you maybe haven't worked 5 or 10 years?
Yeah.
Is your health going to allow you to perform well at that job?
That's the big one.
If you can get it, to be able to keep that job? And is your health going to allow you to work enough years to fill whatever gap you have? I think those are the big questions around this myth. And we can't concretely say, yes, we are in control of that. We can do some things to influence that, but it's primarily outside of our control. And so that's why this is a myth.
Yeah, you don't want to just kick the can down the road and say, I'll go back to work if I need to, for all the reasons that you just mentioned. That's a really dangerous assumption to make.
Yeah, and let's not think about going back to work in retirement, but the Center for Retirement Research found that 37% of retirees had to retire earlier than they planned due to health problems.
Yeah.
That's people retiring earlier, not going back to work. So I can only imagine that the number not able to go back to work is even bigger.
That makes sense. All right, our final myth today, Amy, it's too late to start saving. What would you tell one of our listeners that feels that way?
It's never too late. It's never too late to start saving because even small contributions grow over time with compound interest. Even dollars saved in your 50s and 60s can have a significant impact on retirement. It's all about putting the pieces together around Social Security, pension, savings, etc., so that your retirement can be the best it can be. And if we say it's too late, then we're throwing in the towel and basically choosing that we can't influence or control this.
Yeah.
And while we can't control it, many of our choices in life, and definitely our choices around saving, will have an impact on what that lifestyle looks like. So every bit helps.
Yeah, you don't want to say, oh, it's too late. Never, ever. It's never too late to put money away because you never know how long you're going to be around to need it.
Yep. It's the same as saying it's too late for me to start exercising.
Amy, great stuff as always today. I mean, there are so many myths out there. We've only covered 10 in these previous episodes, but there's probably 100 if we really set our minds to it. We're going to stop at 10. In the meantime, if any of our listeners want to talk to you and your team at Thimbleberry Financial, how do they best find you?
They can get a hold of us at thimbleberryfinancial.com or by giving us a call at 503-610-6510.
Great stuff, Amy. We'll be back in a couple weeks.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jag.
Securities offered through registered representatives of Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a broker-dealer member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and Thimbleberry Financial are not affiliated. Discussions in this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through registered representatives of Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a broker-dealer member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and Thimbleberry Financial are not affiliated.